Hello there everyone, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns and today I'm going to show you how to make this beaded 5-strand braid wirework necklace. And this is what mine looks like. So we have a basic 5-strand braid here, but just using wire. And then I'm using 2 different sizes of beads to achieve this curve within the braid as we're making it. So I've got the smaller beads on the top and then the larger beads on the bottom here. And I've just chosen to use these materials. Then I've attached my chain to the ends where in the end of the braid I've actually finished off the ends that we're using ribbon ends. Then of course my findings as well. You can choose whatever kind of chain and findings that you want to. This is just my choice. So if you want to learn how to make this necklace, then keep watching. So it's these materials here that we're going to need. First of all, the wire that I'm using is a 0.8mm silver coated copper wire. This is going to be used for the whole braid. And then I'm using 2 different sizes of beads. Now first of all here I have some 8mm rounds, these are the larger ones. The specific ones I'm using are some rainbow coated hematite gemstone rounds and they're faceted as well to add a bit of sparkle. And then I have some 6mm rounds, so these are the smaller ones. These are just some black agate gemstone rounds as well, just to kind of be nice and neutral against these larger ones that are then going to be the ones that stand out. But obviously you can choose whatever beads you want to use, so you could easily choose the same colour in 2 different sizes of beads. That will then of course give you a different look. And then I'm going to use these ribbon ends here to finish off the ends of the braid with. We can then attach our chain to them as well. And then I just have my findings, so I've got a loft or claw clasp and extender chain, and I'm going to attach it all together using these jump rings. So let's get our materials ready and let's get started. And then we'll need some lengths of our wire here. So what I have is 5 lengths of about 30 centimeters each. You just want to make sure that the wires are nice and straight as well, so just smooth them out. And then what I've done is on the end, towards the end of the wires, I've just put them into my spring clamp just to help hold them together and makes it easy to start the braid out. So then to start making the braid, we're going to start working with the wires here, right from where they're coming out from that spring clamp. And then I'm going to first of all make some stitches in the braid just with the wire itself before we're adding any beads, just to get a bit of structure in there. So I'm just also separating the wires out to make it a bit easier to work with. Obviously the longer lengths here. And then what we're going to do is start from one side. Now it doesn't matter what side you start from, you can start from the right side, same as me. That's just what comes natural to me. Or you can start from the left one. It doesn't matter at all, you're going to get the same result as long as you obviously stay consistent throughout. So I'm just going to take the furthest right wire here. And then to start the braid, I'm just going to bring that in towards the other ones. I'm going to go over the first one, and it might just be helpful to kind of just put a bit of a curve with your fingers into it to begin with. I'll go over the next one there. So we basically just need to weave in between the rest of them. We're working this wire towards the other side. Then we need to come underneath the next one. And then over the one after that. And then under the last one. So basically this wire is just going over, under until it reaches the other side. And it can always be a little bit kind of fiddly in the beginning because obviously all the wires are loose until we get some stitches done, and it becomes much easier to keep doing the same technique. And also you might find the beginning of your braid hem will be a little bit messy. So that's why I like to do a few stitches just to kind of get into the rhythm of it. So that's the first one. And I then need to bring this back into the braid because right now it's going out to the side. So I like to just put my fingers where it's coming to the side there underneath that last one, and then just where I want it to kind of have that curve back in, I just kind of bend it straight down so it comes straight down with the rest of them. But that's now it's moved from the right side, and now the new furthest to the left one instead. Then I take the next one here that's furthest to the right, to the new right one, and then we basically just need to do the same thing. So what I like to do as well is just, we need to go over the first one, so I like to just push that down a little bit from where it's going over the other one we brought through, and the next one I just push up a little bit, and then the next one again I push down. So basically just opposite to where they're coming over or under the previous one that we brought through, because that then just opens them up a bit and creates a bit more space for this wire that we're going to bring through now. So that just means that we can make the braid a little bit tighter as well. So I'm just going to bring it over. Technically now we can literally just bring it straight through, but it is going obviously over. Again, just put that curve into it with your fingers. So over, and then we go under and over and under until it comes out on the opposite side. So even though we are going over, under, technically because we kind of push them either down or up the other wires that's already going straight down, we're kind of just bringing it straight through them. And then that is now brought all the way out to that side as well. And then we can push them flat a little bit again, while we then, the one we just brought through, we also want to bring back in, straight down. So like that. So that's now back into the braid again. And then we'll basically just continue this just for a couple of rounds or stitches in the braid until we're going to then start obviously adding in the beads for the pattern as well. So now I just made a couple of stitches here, and what I've made sure to do as well, so my last one, I brought that wire through to the opposite side, but I've not brought it back in, so I brought it down there and kind of put that curve into it and the bend. I've just left it straight out to the side because now I'm going to start adding beads in before I make the next round. So again, the outer right one there, the first right one, is the one I'm going to bring through, so over, under. But before I do that, I want to add my beads. So to the second wire from the right, I'm going to add my 6mm. So just put that onto the wire and push it all the way up to sit basically where I won't go any further, and that's going to then, bead is going to sit in between the first and then the third wire there, which is then the middle one out of all of them. And then it's on the fourth one, so we have a wire further to the right with no bead, then the second one has a bead, the third one there, the next one doesn't have a bead, and then the fourth one here, I'm going to also add a bead. And that is going to be the 8mm round. So that's the larger one. And again, we just have the other lengths with no beads on sitting in between them nicely. And then I'm going to bring this wire that we brought through last time, that's sticking straight out to the side, down now, because then what I can do is actually use the bead to guide the shape of it. So I'm just going to make sure I hold all this together so it's sitting correctly with all the wires in between the beads there, and then I just follow the shape of the bead and bring the wire around the side of it just like that, and then you can see it comes straight down. And then we basically just continue with the technique. So it's the exact same principle, just because we have the beads in there, that doesn't make any difference. Obviously we just gotta make sure the beads stay in the place that we want them to. So I'm just going to take the outer one, so that's the furthest right one in my case, bring it over the next one. Again, I'm going to use the bead to kind of go around. That naturally puts that curve into it that I want, but following the shape of the bead, so it creates it nicely. And then I'm just going to go over the first wire and then under the next one, over the one after that, and under the last one. And just bring it all the way through there, and then make sure to kind of push it up as far as it'll go, to basically also then help cage in those beads. So it's going to sit like this, and then we can flatten out the wires a bit again. You can see that we have the 6mm on the right side in my case, and then the 8mm on the left side. And we're basically going to continue doing that. That's the important bit as well, is make sure we always add the 6mm on the same side and also the 8mm on the same side. So I'm basically just not going to repeat what I've just done. So that means I'm going to add my beads before I start the next round, and before also I bring this wire going straight out to the side back into it. So that means not the first one furthest to the right wire there, that's going to have no bead on it, but the second one I'm going to add my 6mm. The third one isn't going to have one, but then the fourth one is going to get my bead. I'm going to add the 8mm round, and then also let that drop all the way down. And also, with having kind of made the first 1 or 2 rounds here with beads, it does become a lot easier, because then the beads will naturally obviously make that spacing that we want. Because you can already see here, they can easily now fit between the wires, whereas before we kind of had to make a bit of space for them. But we then just bring the one that's going straight out to the side around the side of this bottom bead, the large one, to bring it back in, come straight down now. And then otherwise, we just continue. So again, I go to my right side, make sure to push these beads up. Just going to bring that wire a little bit closer. So make sure to push the beads up while I'm bringing this wire through. Bring it over, under, over and under. And then I kind of just grab hold of my lengths and then pull it out to the side. And you can see that it goes straight out again. So just like that. You can just make sure to smooth everything out as well. I like to do that as I'm working with them to make sure, because obviously as we're moving the wire, it's going to get some bends and that into also with the heat from your hands. But just make sure to keep smoothing them out so we don't get any kinks and unwanted bends within the braid itself. So there we go, you can start to see the effect. And because we're then adding the 6mm round on one side and then the 8mm, the larger one on the other side, you're going to get this natural curve to it, because obviously they add a different size to it. So that's also why just make sure that you kind of when we're bringing the wire through, that we get it as tight to the beads as possible, because then they're going to help make that curve into the piece, which is going to make it fit nicely for a necklace. So just keep doing this until you have the length and we reach the other end. So now that I kept going here, you can see this effect of the curve that we get because we're using the smaller and the larger beads. Then it's going to lay nice on the neckline. And in total what I've used so far is 12 beads, so 12 of the larger ones and 12 of the smaller ones there. So on the end, what I'm just going to do is, because you can see it's kind of a bit uneven. Up here, it looks like it kind of starts with the smaller one there, but down here it kind of finishes on the larger one because of the angle that we get in the braid. So I just want to kind of rectify that, make it more even looking. So I'm going to go to the end where we've been working, and then I'm just going to start adding another set of beads, but I'm only going to be adding the small one in this case. So just get it on that second wire, same principle as before, but I'm only going to add that, not the large one, just to get that similar effect, because if I just bring it around, you can see they're going to end up again then looking like we finish on that small one, same principle as down there. And otherwise we just repeat the exact same thing. So I'm going to use that bead, make sure it's pushed all the way down, and then bring the outer one around that and over to the other side. Again, making sure to do the braid structure. So I need to bring it over first, then under the next one, and over the last one. And then we can see here, we get that effect. But obviously now, because we don't have the large bead set on the end, we're not going to get the same effect by bringing this outer one around the bead and back into the braid. So I'm actually going to start pushing this together as well, because we also want it to narrow in, because you can see right there in the other end. Same principle. When it's just the wire that I'm using, it's narrower. So I'm just going to start pushing this in closer to each other. And then also we're just going to bring in this one here back into the braid. So I'm just going to bring it around and then make sure again to follow the braid structure, so this comes over the one we just brought out to the side. And you can always again put your fingers on there to make sure you still get a nice curve and everything at the end of the braid. So you can see it's then getting narrow, and we just have the effect now on this end of just having that single bead, and it looks more like the beginning then. We get that same kind of ending on both ends of the braid. So we're at this point here. All I want to do now is do a few more stitches down here with just the wire, because we're kind of finished off the beaded section now. So I'm just going to do a few more rounds with the wire, just like we did in the beginning. And then all that's left to do is finish the ends of the braid. So I'm going to do them both the same way and just show you on one here. I'm going to be using these ribbon ends to give it a nice and neat finish, or we can then use those loops in them to attach our findings, so whatever chain that you want to use. So these ones here, they fit just perfectly over the end of the braid, so the part without the beads is where we're going to add them. So first of all, we need to kind of cut them down and obviously get rid of the excess wire here. So first of all, I like to kind of just make sure I cut the right amount. So a place where my ribbon end would sit, or something like that. And then that'll give me a good idea of where I need to cut. So I can just grab my wire cutters, and then I can go in onto that part of the braid and cut off the excess. So just literally go straight across and cut a few wires at a time to the other side, just like that. You can see. If I then just take the ribbon end again and then just place it on the end, it's going to fit just perfectly there. And I'd rather cut off too little than too much, because you can always, if you find that it's too far away from the ends where the beads are there, you can always cut off a little bit more. But you can obviously not add if you cut off too much. But that's going to fit nicely. Then before I actually add it and attach it on there, what I like to do is just kind of deal with the ends of the wire, because Right now they're just obviously part of the braid that we made. What I like to do is just put little bends on the very end. So I can just take one at a time here, taking my chain nose pliers, and on the outer ones, so this is an outer one first of all, I just grab the very end of the wire, about 1 millimeter or so, and then I just flick the wrist and bend it inwards a bit. So literally just something like that. I'm going to do the same with the rest. And the reason that I'm doing this is just to basically be able to add a little bit more, you could call it friction, inside the ribbon end, because I'm also going to add some glue. But I want to make sure that the ribbon end isn't just going to be able to kind of pull out or pull off at some point with time. And I like to kind of put these little bends in to give the glue something more to grab onto. Because then we're going to make sure to get the glue right in between all the wires here. So just keep doing this until you're happy with how all the ends are bent, and we still have a pretty level finish at the very end. And we can always keep going back and double checking for the actual ribbon end as well. Just going to do this one as well, because obviously we don't want one of the wires kind of sticking out further, because then that's going to stop the ribbon end from going as far down as we want. So something like that, put it back on, and it's going to fit just nicely. And then what we're going to do as well is need to get some glue out. And the glue that I like to use is this E6000 here, and I'm just using a toothpick to apply it with, because we just need a little bit. Something like that. And then I'm going to put it inside the ribbon end. Make sure to kind of basically coat the inside on the sides there. And we don't need to put too much because it's just going to come spilling out anyway. But just put a decent amount. But that's another bonus anyway. This glue dries clear if a little bit would spill out when you're clamping this down. Like that. And then whatever I have left, I like to add to the end of the braid. And I make sure to really get it in between the wires there, like I said. Because then once we attach the ribbon end to this and it dries, it's going to adhere nicely together. And that glue is then really going to make sure that the ribbon end isn't just going to be able to pull off at some point. So get it right in there between the wires. Something like that. Then I take the ribbon end, place it on the end. And then we just need to clamp it down. So I take my flat nose pliers, and I like to hold my piece in my hand and then keep hold of both sides of the ribbon end to kind of make sure it stays where I want it to as we're clamping this down. Just go in and gradually clamp it down more and more. I don't go in and make a big clamp straight away, a big push. I like to do it gradually just to make sure that it doesn't move to a point where we don't want it to sit, because you can risk that it kind of slides a little bit as you're clamping it down. So I like to get it to a point where it's almost all the way down, and then I just double check it, make sure it still sits nicely. If it doesn't, I can move it a little bit still. You can see there. And then I go in when I'm happy with it and clamp it tight. And I also like to just go in from the side just to kind of close up the sides of the ribbon in there. So something like that. And that's all there really is to finishing off the ends. So obviously let the glue dry, because that'll also make it sit more fastened. And do the other end as well. And then you can use these loops here, like I said, to attach whatever chain that you want to. And then obviously your findings as well. So I then finished off both of the ends there, and I've attached my chain and my findings to the ribbon ends. So the necklace is done and it's now ready to wear. And then this is what it looks like. So you can see it's a pretty simple technique that we're making, just making a braid with wire, but obviously it's then using those different size beads where we achieve this curve that we can then turn it into a necklace. Because I previously made a bracelet using this technique, and there I just used the same size bead so we get a straight braid, but obviously here we're using it for the necklace. So if you want to, you can easily make a set to match now. I already have a tutorial for that bracelet that I made previously, so feel free to check that out. I'm going to put a link to that in the description box below. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Check out other tutorials on my channel as well. I have loads of tutorials for wire braiding in different ways and with and without beads as well, so feel free to check that out. But otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.